Hey, welcome back to Damon's Metal Casting. Guess what? In this video, it's going to be a little different. Long time ago at the beginning of the year, someone found my YouTube channel and they're like, hey, you cast items, you look like you can cast them fairly well. And I'm like, yep, sure can. And he's like, well, I have something for you to cast. And I said, well, I guess I'll try it. Little did I know this project would just about make me pull my hair out, question if I should even took the project, and make me go through many different techniques on how to get this project done. So you as a viewer are going to benefit from this either as a clown show for me trying to get this project done, or you're also going to learn different techniques that I had to go through to get a better casting off of this one. So let's go ahead and get the story started. So the gentleman finds me. His father made a car club plate back when the father was in high school. There was another gentleman that was also in the car club that I believe never received a plate. So this guy is like, hey, you know, this other guy wants a plate, but I don't want to give him my dad's car club plate. Are you able to cast it? And I said, yeah, I'll try my best. And so anyway, he's like, well, I don't want to send you the actual plate. And I'm like, oh no, how am I going to cast this? And he's like, well, I got an idea. How about I send you a silicone mold of the plate, and then you can make a resin casting off of that and use that as your pattern. So for this video, we're actually going to start off metal casting with plastic casting or resin casting. So here's our silicone mold that we're going to start off. And we're going to go from there all the way up to a final project of a of the aluminum plate, just like the one his dad cast back when he was in high school. So let's go ahead and get this started.
So I'm starting out with some basic resin I bought from Amazon here. It's just a 2-component system, equal volume, and those cups I already put on a balance and kind of marked out where the volume is that I'm trying to do. And stirring it up. Sometimes you're supposed to stir it slower, but I have a vacuum unit that actually degasses it, so we'll go ahead and try that. There it is, degassing, pulling all the bubbles out. Now I'm trying to pour it. You can see how thin it is. That's how you keep the bubbles from getting in there. If there is any bubbles, you try and pour a real thin stream. And here it is a little later, and you can see it overflowing on the right. So this casting is garbage. First problem. All right, so here we go again. We're going to try it again, but this time I'm going to build a containment out of foam board and hot glue. So that way if it overflows, it doesn't go all over everything. That was a mess last time. Now I'm just marking off water. I put water in there, and of course 1 gram of water is 1 cubic centimeter, so that way I can actually mark off the volume I'm going to use for this. Now I'm actually pouring in more water because I'm going to mark the second layer, and I think it's a lot easier to go use 1 cup to pour both resin in and then just mix it up, rather than to try and pour it in 2 cups and then scrape it out of the other one. So that's what I'm doing here on this project. All right, let's try this all over again. So here's part 1 of the resin going into the cup that I just marked on the balance. Now here's part 2 of the resin going in, and we'll fill that up to the mark on the cup that we did on the balance. Just give it some mixing, mix both parts together, do the vacuum process again to get all the air bubbles out. I'm just pouring it in a fine stream like I did before. This is pretty slow to harden, so I have about 40 minutes to do this, and you can tell I'm trying to take my time so I don't overflow the mold again. I let a couple days go past before I decided to demold it. You can tell I'm being very careful. It seems like the silicone and the plastic are sticking together pretty good. Usually you don't have to use mold release, and I don't use mold release, so I'm just being very careful not to tear the pattern, because of course if I tear it and have to do another casting, it's not going to look as good. It's going to have flaws in it. And that turned out pretty good. I think we have something we can cast off of now. Turned out a lot better than I thought I was going to. This project I had to build a new casting flask for, so you can see the wooden casting flask I just built. I'm also using talcum powder. I just wear a dust mask when I use it, and I try not to get it everywhere in the garage. And now I'm just adding facing sand. Do this in a lot of my other videos. And that's before I really start packing it on. Figure I skipped some spots, and just for gits and shiggles, I thought maybe I could use an air hammer to pack it, you know. This isn't like this is like quite a few times I tried packing this before. So let's go ahead and check this out and see what it looks like. Just blowing all the extra sand away so that way it doesn't interfere with the pattern when I turn it over and pull the plate off. Let's see how this one turned out. Oh no, got some sand stuck in the lettering up the angel wings. Got a lot of tear out. That's not gonna work. Gonna have to do it again. I figured since I'm having sand stuck on the pattern, I would go ahead and buy this parting powder that's supposed to be a special parting powder to really help things along and not stick to the pattern. And on the bag, there was like every warning known to man. I have no idea what they make this stuff out of. There was no SDS or anything to tell you what it was made out of. But basically, it's like, don't get it in your food, don't get it in your nose, you know, don't get it in your house, on and on and on and on. So I'm not real thrilled about trying this, but we're going to go ahead and try it anyway and see how it ends up. Let's see if that new parting powder helped out. And no, there's still tear out. Look at that S, has little sand stuck in it. Angel has sand stuck beside the head and the wing, and then the A even has a little fill in there. So we know if we cast that mold, it's going to be absolute junk. So moving on to the next.
So at this point, I'm literally losing it. I packed it up several more times, and I'm not going to bore you and show it packing over and over and over and failing. So anyway, I'm thinking, what is the difference between this pattern and the patterns I've previously done? Well, I know the edges are sharper, they're not at as much angle, but there's still something going on where it seems like the sand's catching an awful lot. So the patterns that I normally have used on my channel, if you watched my other videos, that are actually made from 3D prints, and then after the 3D print I use spotting putty, and then I sand it down, and then I go ahead and put a nice epoxy paint job on it so that way nothing sticks. See, you can see how shiny that is and how smooth that is. That is a great pattern. You get it real smooth, you put your talcum powder on there, and it pulls right out of the sand. So something like that is a really good surface for a casting pattern and not having your sand stick to it. In fact, I even belong to a casting Facebook group, and that was one of the problems. Someone tried to reproduce something, and it was a piece of metal, and it was old, and it was kind of rusty and pitted and everything like that, and you couldn't get a smooth cast off of it. Well, if you fix the surface of it, you could probably do a lot better. So again, you know, pattern prep is really important. So I went ahead and did that. I painted the pattern. So there's my pattern prepped, and it still didn't work. And about this time, another person contacted me who saw my YouTube channel, and he's like, hey, could you cast something for me? I have a family name that I want to use for my car, you know, and put it on my car. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. I can try it. And he's like, yeah, it was carved by hand and it's in the family. So like, I'm really kind of concerned. Like, I got to take care of this because it's old. I think he said it was 20 years old. So anyway, he sends me it. And then all of a sudden I realize this is a Foundry match plate, and it has the locating pieces on the side for the flask that goes in it. So not only is your flask secure on it and doesn't move, so is your pattern. Your pattern's stuck to it. And of course, since this one's 20 years old, and I'm kind of scared of pounding the heck out of it and breaking some of the pieces. And then also, there's a lot of stuff happening on this where I'm not so sure the sand can pull right out. So I'm actually rebuilding this, and so if you want to subscribe, this will be one of my next projects to check out. But anyway, this gave me a lot of insight on where I need to go with my casting. So now I made my match plate, and now my flask fits right down in there too. So that way there's my pattern, and there's my casting flask that locks in there and doesn't move, so I can pack it up and the sand won't move. And then it still didn't quite work. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on now? Well, it turns out I taped the pattern down instead of actually gluing it. And the tape still had a little bit of flex because the back of the pattern was concave. So every time I pound on that, the sand wouldn't pack because the pattern would flex and it wouldn't allow the sand to pack up. So now it's epoxied and now it doesn't move. Also, I put tape around it because the pattern has a little bit of edges that the sand can get under and it causes tear out. So to prevent the tear out, I went ahead and put tape around it, which causes a little bit of a curve. So now all I got to do is be able to cast this and I could grind the sides on my belt sander and make it smooth again. So let's go ahead and see how this does.
Let's get this done, starting with the talcum powder again. And I don't show it, but I actually take the pattern and turn it sideways over the trash can and dust it a little bit to get rid of more talc. See this picture right here, you can see that some of the talc is no longer there. And just putting on the facing sand, that way it's finely divided and gets in every groove. Just pounded it down in there just like I do on everyone. There we go. Fingers crossed. Looks like it ended up pretty good. At the very top left, you can kind of see it's distorted, but I don't care because I know if I cast that, it's excess aluminum there that I can actually just grind off or sand off on my belt sander. So pretty happy with that. So let's get rolling. Pretty excited about this. I've been waiting for a really good impression of the pattern in the sand. Now I'm taking the temperature of the aluminum with my little thermocouple probe, and I'm gonna pour it about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit or just slightly higher. The reason why I'm doing this is the plate that I'm casting is very thin. So I want the aluminum to stay hot and be able to go through the whole entire mold cavity before it cools up and solidifies. So now I'm going to attempt to pour the aluminum as fast as I can. I know the part's thin and the aluminum's hot. I really want that aluminum to flow through the whole cavity. And as I'm watching, I'm getting worried because I don't see it coming up through the riser on the other side. And so I keep pouring it, but it seems like the aluminum already solidified up and it's not taking any more in the mold. Yeah, I'm just frustrated now because I just don't see that coming up the riser. See, there's no aluminum up in that riser. I'm still crossing my fingers, hopefully something good happen. And here we go. Looks okay, but once you see me clean it up, there's going to be some problems. Well, can you see the problem? Two big gaping holes. That is not going to work. Yep, that pattern's done. And the sad thing is, it came out really well except for that. Here's a close-up of it. Yeah, so there it is with the two big holes. And what's depressing is that was actually a fairly decent casting. I could probably clean that up and it'd look pretty good if it wasn't for those two holes. But I know how to fix this. I know the solution to this, and we're going to go ahead and move forward, and it's going to be done after this. This is the underside of the cope. You can see the sprue and the riser. I connected them with more pathways. That way the aluminum has a better chance to flow all across the mold cavity. So let's go ahead and try this out. I bet it's going to work. This time you can actually see just a little bit of aluminum in that riser. So I'm hoping it filled out that entire cavity and we have something good underneath. Yeah, it looks like it filled out pretty well. I think it worked this time. Here's a better overview of the casting, you can see there's a little hole up in the top left corner, but you know what? Those have to be drilled out anyway, and if you just over drill it just a little bit, maybe it won't be so noticeable. And then the only other flaw I saw was there's a little tiny nick in the head of the person that's on the casting. You can see the pathways that I put in there to help the aluminum flow through the mold better, and those are just going to get milled off in my mill. So let's go ahead and fix this thing up and do it right.
All right, let's look at that final casting. So here it is, all cleaned up. I cleaned it up with an abrasive wheel on a Dremel, and then I also cleaned the sides up with a belt sander. I took the runners off the back of it that helped the aluminum flow through the pattern. I took that off with a mill, and then I went ahead and sanded the rest of it flat. You can kind of see a little bit of it. And then I went ahead and sent a picture of it to the customer, and the customer's perfectly happy with it and said, go ahead and send it. The only thing I wish that would have came out was that little hole there, but you know what? That hole almost laps a hole that's supposed to be there anyway. I offered to go ahead and drill the holes out, you know, because it's a car club plate, and the customer said, no, no big deal, we'll take care of it. And I said, well, if you oversize that a little bit and oversize this one a little bit, you probably would never tell that there was a flaw in this. So I hope he does that. I hope he does that so it looks really good. And so anyway, I appreciate the customer's patience waiting on me to get this done, because it's been kind of hard on me to figure out the problems. And also right now I'm filming in my garage. It's like 100 degrees because I don't have AC in here, so it's been pretty hot where I live. And you know, now you know the whole process that started off from a rubber mold from the original pattern to a plastic replica. Let me get that turned upside down. To a plastic replica that was made from the rubber mold, and then all the way to the final product, which is hopefully a pretty good replica of what he has at home as the original. And again, he didn't want to send the original because his father had made it back in high school, and it's a lot of sentimental value to him, and I don't blame him. So this ended up pretty good. So the client got back to me. In his email, he said, thanks a lot for the casting. He said that the casting looked a lot better than the picture I'd sent him that he thought looked good. And then he said the gentleman that was in the car club that he gave the casting to said he was real appreciative of it, and he's glad he's got it after you know, being in the car club and actually having something that the other people had. So I'm really glad I could make that happen, and I'm really glad that I could meet the expectations. So again, to the client, thank you for being so you know, understanding with my situation. I had a few things happen in my life that caused this to postpone for quite a while. Also in Arizona, it is just exceedingly hot to be casting with no AC. Also to the viewers, thank you so much for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. And if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.